My name is Denise, and I'm 58 years old, and I never imagined my own daughter-in-law would be the reason strangers started spitting venom about me online. I've always taken pride in being respected in my community. For 30 years, I've owned a small catering business that served everyone from church luncheons to town council meetings. My reputation wasn't just professional, it was personal. People trusted me, called me kind, dependable, even motherly. That's why, when everything came crashing down, it didn't just sting, it broke me. It all started 2 years ago, when my only son, Jordan, brought home his new girlfriend, Brielle. I remember the first time I saw her, tall, striking, with a smile that could melt ice. She seemed polite, sweet, and eager to make a good impression. I welcomed her with open arms. After all, Jordan looked happy for the first time in years, and that was enough for me. At first, Brielle was the kind of daughter-in-law any mother would dream of. She complimented my cooking, helped with dishes, and even asked for my secret pie crust recipe. I felt like I was finally gaining the daughter I never had. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. It started with little remarks, small, sharp comments wrapped in politeness. One evening, after dinner, she said, "You're lucky Jordan still calls you this often. Most men his age don't stay so attached to their mothers." She smiled as she said it, but I remember feeling uneasy. I laughed it off at the time, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it, but those small remarks became more frequent. Before long, Brielle stopped asking me for recipes and started criticizing my cooking instead. "You make everything so heavy," she'd say with a smirk. "No wonder Jordan eats so slow." My son never noticed the undertone. He'd laugh along, thinking it was harmless teasing. But I felt the sting every time. The tension built quietly. Family dinners became awkward, conversations forced. I told myself it was just growing pains, two women learning to share space in Jordan's life. I had no idea she was already planting seeds of resentment, not just between us, but among people around us. Then, one morning, everything changed. I woke up to dozens of notifications on my phone, Facebook tags, messages, comments. My heart sank as I opened the first one. It was a post in a local community group, written by none other than Brielle. She claimed I was a manipulative mother-in-law who constantly belittled her and tried to control her marriage. She said I called her unfit to be Jordan's wife, and that I spread rumors about her infertility. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. People I'd cooked for, served, and loved were calling me horrible names: toxic, jealous, evil. A few even said they'd known I had that controlling look about me. I felt sick. I rushed to call Jordan, my voice trembling as I tried to explain what I'd seen, but he sounded tired, confused. "Mom," he said, "maybe you should just stay off social media for a while. Brielle's upset. And you two have been clashing. Let it cool down." My reputation was being torn apart, and he wanted me to let it cool down? I spent the rest of the day glued to my phone, reading every cruel comment, every lie. Some of Brielle's friends chimed in, claiming they'd heard me insult her before. Total fabrication. I knew then that she'd been building this narrative for weeks, maybe months. By that evening, my business page had started receiving one-star reviews from strangers. "Wouldn't support someone so cruel," one said. "Keep your nasty attitude out of the kitchen," said another. I couldn't even step outside without feeling like people were staring at me differently. The next Sunday at church, I could feel the whispers. My pastor greeted me stiffly. Women I'd known for years avoided eye contact. I smiled and pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was collapsing. That night, I sat at my dining table surrounded by silence, my laptop still open to that awful post. My heart felt heavy, like someone had stuffed stones inside it. Every time I thought about responding, I hesitated. If I defended myself, it would only fuel her lies. If I stayed silent, it would look like guilt. In desperation, I called my best friend, Nancy. She's known me for 30 years since Jordan was in diapers. "You have to collect everything," she said firmly. Screenshots, dates, all of it. Don't respond, just document. Truth always comes out. I wanted to believe her. But as I stared at the endless stream of comments calling me a manipulative old woman, I wasn't sure the truth even mattered anymore. That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not because of what people thought, but because I couldn't understand why Brielle hated me enough to destroy me. What had I ever done besides try to be kind? I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the dim glow of my laptop screen, reading my name being dragged through the mud. The sound of the clock ticking in the background was the only thing keeping me grounded. And somewhere between exhaustion and heartbreak, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't let her win. I didn't know how yet, or what it would cost me, but I wasn't going to let Brielle erase who I was. That's when I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone was deliberately trying to destroy me. To understand how things got this bad, you need to know who Brielle really was. When Jordan first brought her into my life, I thought she was heaven sent. My son had always been a quiet man, hard-working, soft-spoken, and far too trusting for his own good. When I saw the sparkle in his eyes as he introduced her, I thought maybe finally he'd found the one who could bring him out of his shell. Brielle was the kind of woman who knew exactly how to charm a room. From the moment she stepped into my house, she had everyone wrapped around her finger. Her voice was warm, her smile genuine, her words carefully chosen. She complimented my home, praised my cooking, and kept calling me Mom, even before the wedding. It all seemed so sincere back then. She told me she'd had a rough upbringing, an absent father, a cold mother, and years of fending for herself. I felt for her. Maybe that's why I tried so hard to make her feel welcome. I let her into my kitchen, shared recipes I'd never given anyone, and even gave her a family heirloom apron that had belonged to my late mother. I thought we were bonding, but looking back now, I can see how calculated everything was. The first red flag came when she started asking subtle questions about my business. How much I earned from catering, how many clients I had, what my biggest events were. At the time, I thought she was just being curious, maybe even supportive. But soon after, I noticed she'd started a small baking business on social media. She never mentioned it to me directly, but I saw the posts, cakes, pastries, and captions about building something from scratch. I was happy for her at first until I realized she was copying my menu and underpricing everything I made. When I asked her about it, she smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Denise, I didn't even realize. You've just inspired me so much." It was said with so much charm that I couldn't bring myself to argue. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Over time, I noticed more inconsistencies. She'd tell stories about her past that didn't add up. One day, she'd say she grew up in Chicago. Another day, she'd say she was raised in Oregon. She'd claim she had no family left, then casually mention a cousin she'd spoken to last weekend. It didn't make sense. But Jordan was so in love he didn't notice or didn't want to. Whenever I gently pointed out something strange, she'd act offended, twisting my words until I ended up apologizing. "I didn't realize I made you uncomfortable," she'd say in a trembling voice, making Jordan rush to comfort her. I'd be left standing there, the villain in my own home. It got worse after they got married. Brielle slowly began creating distance between Jordan and me. Invitations to dinner suddenly stopped. I'd find out about family gatherings through social media photos, always with captions like, "Just us two, no drama tonight." I remember staring at one of those posts for a long time, wondering what drama she meant. Then she started spreading small rumors about me, subtle things that seemed harmless at first. She told one of my neighbors that I had a hard time letting go of Jordan, implying I was possessive. She told another that I was a bit controlling about how they decorated their home. None of it was overtly malicious, but it painted a certain picture, one that made me seem overbearing and intrusive. It's strange how easy it is to destroy someone's image without ever saying anything outright cruel. All it takes is tone, suggestion, and a perfectly timed sigh. Brielle was a master at it. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, laughing with one of her friends. She said, "Oh, please, I'm not scared of Denise. She just thinks she's the matriarch of the world." My heart clenched. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the hurt. convincing myself it was just a misunderstanding. I tried to talk to Jordan about it, but he brushed it off. "Mom, you're overthinking again. Brielle loves you," he'd say, always with that same tired voice, like I was the problem. I started keeping notes, writing down incidents, things she said, dates when I felt something was off. It felt paranoid, but I needed some way to hold on to my sanity. Every time I wrote something down, I prayed I was wrong, that I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. The more time passed, the more control she gained over every part of Jordan's life. She managed his finances, his schedule, even his friendships. If someone didn't like her, they were quietly pushed out of the picture. And she did it all with a smile so disarming that no one ever questioned her motives. She'd occasionally post sweet messages about me online, photos of us together with captions like, "Love my second mom." To outsiders, it looked perfect. But behind closed doors, she barely spoke to me unless she wanted something. It was as if Brielle lived two lives, the one everyone saw, and the one she showed me. I could feel the walls closing in around me, but I had no proof, no way to expose the cracks in her perfect facade. And then one day, I noticed something on her phone when she left it on the counter, a message notification preview that read, "She's starting to suspect." Before I could see more, she snatched it up, forcing a laugh. "Oh, just work stuff," she said, her tone too casual. That was the moment I knew. But the mask she wore was about to slip, and when it did, it would shatter everything she'd built. The first post was bad enough, but what came next was pure cruelty. I thought the gossip would fade once people realized how absurd Brielle's claims were. I told myself that people would see through her lies eventually. But instead, it spread faster and meaner than I could have ever imagined. Within a week, there were more posts. Brielle didn't just stop at vague accusations. She escalated. She began sharing screenshots supposedly of text messages between us. In them, I called her names, mocked her, even told her she'd never be good enough for my son. Every word was a fabrication. I'd never said any of it. But the screenshots looked so real. Same profile photo, same writing style. The timestamps even matched nights I remembered texting her, though our actual conversations had been nothing like that. It hit me then. She was doctoring our texts, faking evidence to make me look like a monster. I stared at my phone, frozen. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone it was fake, but how could I prove it? People believed what they saw on their screens. No one cared about truth anymore, they cared about drama. Brielle knew exactly what she was doing. She posted everything in private groups, neighborhood watch pages, moms' forums, even community event boards where I used to advertise my catering services. Her captions always sounded hurt but measured, the perfect tone of a victim. "I never wanted to post this," she'd write. "But sometimes you have to stand up for yourself when family crosses the line." The comments flooded in support, sympathy, pity. Women called her brave. Men told her to set boundaries. Some even offered to recommend lawyers for emotional abuse. It was surreal, watching strangers discuss my life like I was some villain from a TV show. My business started to feel the blow almost immediately. Clients I'd worked with for years suddenly had to cancel. One woman, a longtime customer, texted me saying, "I'm so sorry, Denise. I can't have someone with your kind of attitude catering our church event. It's not good optics." Optics. That word rang in my ears for days. I wanted to fight back, but every time I drafted a post defending myself, I deleted it. Anything I said would only fuel her narrative. She'd twist it, screenshot it, and make it proof of my instability. When I confronted Jordan about it, his response gutted me. "Mom," he sighed. "Maybe she just needed to vent. You know how emotional she gets. Don't take it personally." My son, the boy I raised to know right from wrong, was watching his wife publicly destroy my name and was telling me not to take it personally. I could barely look at him. In private, I tried calling Brielle. When she finally picked up, her tone was flat and cold. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "You're making people think I'm some sort of monster." She laughed softly. I didn't make anyone think anything. They're just seeing you for who you are. Then she hung up. That moment broke something inside me. I'd faced betrayal before, friends who gossiped, clients who didn't pay, but nothing compared to the pain of being vilified by my own family. Nancy, my friend, came over that evening. I showed her everything, every post, every comment. She read in silence, her eyes dark with anger. "She's trying to isolate you," Nancy said finally. "Classic manipulation tactic. She wants everyone to believe her version before you even get a chance to speak." I nodded, numb. "What do I do?" "Start documenting everything," she said. "Every lie, every fake message, save screenshots. If this gets worse, you'll need proof." So that's what I did. Night after night, I sat in front of my laptop, copying links, saving posts, creating folders. The folder names still haunt me. Brielle Lies 1, Brielle Lies 2, screenshots of hate. It became my obsession, my way of clinging to sanity. Still, every morning, I woke up to new posts, some subtle, some vicious. One day, she claimed I'd shown up at their house uninvited and screamed at her in front of neighbors. I hadn't even left my home that day. Another time, she posted a long paragraph about elderly people who manipulate younger women through guilt. Everyone knew who she meant. I could barely go grocery shopping without feeling eyes on me. A woman in the produce aisle whispered something to her friend as I passed by, then both of them looked away quickly. It got to the point where I stopped attending church altogether. I couldn't stand the way people hesitated before greeting me, as if unsure whether I was the monster they'd read about. I felt trapped, defeated, alone. Then, one night, as I sat scrolling through yet another thread full of lies, I noticed a new message in my inbox. The sender's name was strange, Null Cipher. No profile picture, no mutual friends. The subject line read, "You're being framed." I almost deleted it. It sounded like spam. Maybe even a scam. But something, call it desperation, intuition, or sheer exhaustion, made me click. The message was short. "I know what she's doing. I can prove it. Don't respond here. If you want help, I'll contact you again soon." My stomach turned. Who was this? How did they know? My hands trembled as I reread the message, trying to make sense of it. I didn't respond, something told me not to. I just closed the laptop, heart pounding. All night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd finally gone crazy. Maybe it was someone trying to mess with me. Maybe it was Brielle herself, playing another game. But deep down, something in that message felt real. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, someone out there did know the truth. Then one night, something strange appeared in my inbox, a message that would change everything. It was past midnight when I saw the message from someone named Null Cipher. My house was dark, quiet, and heavy with that kind of silence that only exists when your whole world has fallen apart. I hadn't been sleeping much every night, felt like a war between my anger and my grief. But that message, it was like a spark in the dark. I didn't know whether to feel hope or fear. At first, I thought it was some cruel prank. Maybe someone had seen Brielle's posts and wanted to taunt me. I hovered over the message for minutes, rereading those few words. "I know what she's doing, I can prove it." There was no profile photo, no personal details, just the name Null Cipher and an email address full of random numbers. My heart pounded as I clicked reply. But my fingers froze above the keyboard. What if it was Brielle? What if this was part of her game to make me look paranoid or desperate? I closed the laptop, telling myself to forget about it. But by the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about that message. It gnawed at me all day as I tried to work in the kitchen. My mind kept wandering, imagining who this person could be. An old friend of hers? A neighbor who'd seen too much? Or maybe someone who'd been one of her victims before? That evening, I opened my email again, and there it was. Another message from the same sender. This time, it wasn't just words. It was a screenshot. The image showed a conversation between Brielle and someone named Chad, a name I didn't recognize. The messages were dated just a few weeks earlier. My blood ran cold as I read them. "Brielle, It's working. She's losing clients and friends. He's starting to pull away too. Chad. You think she'll figure it out? Brielle. Not a chance. Jordan thinks she's crazy. By the time I'm done, everyone will. I sat there. Frozen. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. There, it was proof that everything happening wasn't coincidence. She was doing it deliberately. The email ended with a single line from Null Cipher. There's more. Don't confront her yet. Let me gather it all. I didn't know who this person was or what their motive might be, but in that moment, I didn't care. For the first time in months, I had something, anything that suggested I wasn't losing my mind. I replied cautiously, thanking them and asking how they got the information. Their response came almost instantly. Let's just say I know how to find what people think they've hidden. She's not the first one I've seen do this. That sentence sent a chill through me. What did that mean? How deep did this go? Over the next few days, I received more messages, each one containing more screenshots, more evidence. There were messages between Brielle and her friends mocking me, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate people online. One of them even suggested making fake reviews about my catering business to teach her a lesson. Brielle had replied with a heart emoji and, already on it? I wanted to vomit. When I showed the messages to Nancy, she covered her mouth in shock. You need to keep everything, she whispered. Whoever this person is, they might be the key to clearing your name. But part of me was uneasy. I didn't know what kind of person could access private conversations like that. Null Cipher never gave away anything about themselves, no name, no location, no personal details. Their tone was always calm, confident, and a little unnerving. Then came the email that made me realize this was bigger than I thought. It said, "She's done this before. 3 years ago, another woman went through what you're going through now. Different name, same pattern, same tricks." Attached was a link to a Reddit post from an account that looked eerily familiar. It was filled with the same kind of fake sympathy posts Brielle was making about me, just directed at someone else. I clicked through the comments and saw the same phrases, the same manipulation style, even the same kind of fabricated screenshots. The realization hit me like a wave. Brielle wasn't just cruel, she was experienced. She'd done this before, and probably gotten away with it. I asked Null Cipher what they wanted from me. Money? Publicity? But their reply was simple. Nothing. Some people just deserve to be exposed. I didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Who helps a stranger for nothing? But when you've been pushed to your breaking point, trust becomes desperation wearing hope's disguise. So, I kept corresponding. Null Cipher warned me to stay quiet, to not react publicly or confront Brielle. They said the evidence they were collecting would end her games for good. Meanwhile, Brielle kept posting. Her tone had grown bolder, smug even. She wrote long paragraphs about toxic parents and healing from abuse. The comments were overflowing with praise and validation. Each post chipped away at my spirit a little more. But now, for every hateful word she wrote, I saved another piece of proof. I was done crying. I was done pleading. For the first time, I had a silent ally, and I was beginning to believe that maybe the truth would finally come to light. I just didn't realize how dark that truth really was. And that's when I learned that Brielle's lies went far beyond anything I had imagined. The hacker didn't want money, they wanted justice. That was the first thing they made clear to me. When I asked why they were helping, their response was blunt, because people like her ruin lives and think they can get away with it. I didn't know what to make of that. Whoever this person was, they weren't just someone with tech skills, they had a personal grudge against liars like Brielle. Over the next few days, Null Cipher sent me files that made my skin crawl. They weren't just digging through Brielle's Facebook posts, they were uncovering things from deep inside her digital life. Screenshots of her emails, deleted messages, even photos she'd hidden. I didn't ask how they got them. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. One of the first things they found was that Brielle had multiple fake social media accounts. Dozens of them. Each one had a slightly different name, but all were used for the same purpose: to spread lies, manipulate people, and build sympathy for herself. She'd reply to her own posts under different names, agreeing with herself, adding fake stories about how mean I'd been. It was disturbing. Then, Nullcipher sent me something worse: messages between Brielle and a man named Dylan. I didn't recognize the name, but the messages made it clear they were more than friends. He was her secret confidant, possibly more. In one message, Brielle bragged, "It's so easy to get people to believe me. All I have to do is cry." And in another, "Denise deserves it. She thinks she's better than me. I'll make sure everyone sees who she really is." I sat there reading those words over and over, my hands shaking. She'd hated me this whole time, planned this. None of it was an accident. Every lie, every post, every tear she'd shed had been part of her manipulation. The hacker sent another message. "She's been doing this for years. Different people. Different names. You're not the first." Attached was a screenshot of an old news article about a woman in another state who'd been the victim of online defamation. Her name was changed for privacy, but the story was eerily similar. She'd been harassed, lost her job, and had her reputation destroyed by anonymous online posts. The pattern was identical to mine. The hacker claimed the person behind those posts was Brielle, only she'd used a fake identity back then. My blood ran cold. How could one person carry so much darkness inside them and still smile so sweetly to my face? I wanted to show everything to Jordan, but I knew he wouldn't believe it without undeniable proof. Every time I mentioned Brielle's behavior, he grew defensive. "She's been through so much," he'd say. "You're just not giving her a chance." He was blind to her manipulation, wrapped around her finger. And that realization hurt even more than the lies. The hacker kept sending more evidence: bank statements, emails, photos. One evening, they sent something that made me sit upright in my chair, a screenshot showing Brielle transferring thousands of dollars to an anonymous account labeled Chad. It was the same name from those earlier messages. When I asked what that meant, Nullcipher replied, "Looks like hush money. She's paying him to delete something. I'll find out what." That one sentence filled me with dread. What could she possibly need to hide that was worth thousands of dollars? The next day, the hacker followed up. "She's been blackmailing people, employers, acquaintances, maybe even family. She uses private information against them." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Brielle wasn't just manipulative, she was dangerous. A predator who thrived on secrets. I remember sitting in my kitchen that night, staring at my laptop screen, feeling torn between horror and relief. Horror because of how twisted she was. Relief because now, at last, there was proof that I wasn't crazy, proof that I wasn't the villain in this story. Still, I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to march over to their house and confront her right then and there. But another part of me, an older, wiser part, knew better. People like Brielle thrived on chaos. If I confronted her without a plan, she'd twist the truth again. So I waited. Nullcipher promised they were almost done gathering the final pieces. "When the time is right," they wrote, "I'll send you something she can't deny." That sentence echoed in my mind for days. Meanwhile, Brielle's online campaign against me grew quieter. She wasn't posting as much, and I started to wonder if maybe she sensed something. Maybe she was starting to feel that the walls were closing in. I noticed little things too. She stopped showing up to community events, avoided eye contact when we crossed paths, and her once busy social media account seemed oddly still. But I knew it wasn't over. Someone like her never stops until they're forced to. Nancy urged me to stay calm and patient. "Don't let her see you're winning," she said. "The truth always finds a way out." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that justice didn't need to be shouted, it just needed to be shown. And deep down, I trusted that whoever Nullcipher was, they were leading me there. And as it turned out, she wasn't done. Her next move crossed every line imaginable. Brielle's next attack wasn't online, it was personal. She must have sensed that her smear campaign had done enough damage because, suddenly, her tactics shifted. She stopped posting, stopped baiting me on social media, and instead began focusing her efforts on the one person I still had left: my son, Jordan. It started subtly, the way all her manipulations did. Jordan stopped calling as often. When I reached out, his tone was polite but distant. The warmth in his voice, the easy affection we'd always shared, was gone. I told myself he was just busy. But deep down, I knew something had changed. One afternoon, I decided to call him. "Sweetheart, it's been a while," I said. "Are you and Brielle doing all right?" There was a pause, then he sighed. "We're fine, Mom. I've just been trying to avoid drama." The word hit like a slap. "Drama?" I asked. "What do you mean?" He hesitated before saying, "Brielle told me you've been contacting her friends behind her back, asking them about her." "That's really inappropriate." My heart dropped. "Jordan, that's not true. I haven't spoken to anyone about her." "Well, she showed me messages," he said quietly. "It looks like they came from you." I felt dizzy. Fake messages again. She was doing it to him now, the same way she'd fooled everyone else online. I tried to explain, but the more I spoke, the more defensive he became. "Mom," he said, "I don't know what's going on between you two, but maybe some space would help." I hung up and sat there in silence, my hands trembling. Brielle wasn't satisfied with destroying my reputation in public. She wanted to sever the one bond she couldn't control. That night, I opened my laptop and messaged Null Cipher. "She's turning my son against me. She's showing him fake messages. I'm losing him." They replied within minutes. "We expected this. Stay calm. Don't reach out to her or to him right now. Let her dig her own hole." I wanted to argue, to scream, to do something. But I listened. I didn't want to make things worse. Over the next few weeks, Brielle kept tightening her hold on Jordan. Every interaction I had with him felt colder. When I tried to talk about work or church or anything normal, he seemed distracted, distant. I could hear Brielle's voice faintly in the background during our calls, sometimes soft, coaxing, always there. Then, one day, Jordan came by the house. It had been weeks since I'd seen him. I was so relieved I nearly cried when I opened the door. But the look on his face told me this wasn't a social visit. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Mom, we need to talk," he said flatly. I ushered him in, heart pounding. "Of course. What's wrong?" He sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where we'd shared countless dinners, birthdays, and laughs. But there was no warmth in his eyes. "Brielle said you've been saving screenshots and spying on her social media. Is that true?" My stomach twisted. "I've been documenting her lies, yes, but only because she's been defaming me. Jordan, she's destroying my life." He shook his head. "She told me you were paranoid, that you're making things up because you can't accept her." I felt like I'd been punched. "Paranoid?" I whispered. "Jordan, you've seen what she's done. You saw those posts." "She said you faked those, Mom," he interrupted. "She said she caught you editing messages to make her look bad." I just stared at him, speechless. I wanted to grab his shoulders and shake the truth into him, to make him see the woman he was defending. But all I could do was whisper, "Do you really believe that?" He looked away. I don't know what to believe anymore. That broke me more than anything. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where he used to sit as a little boy, grinning up at me with frosting on his chin. Now that same boy, my whole world was looking at me like a stranger. The next day, I got a message from Null Cipher. "We've found more. She's been altering screenshots to frame you. I'll send proof soon. Do not reach out to your son until then." They attached a few early examples of how Brielle manipulated messages. It was shocking she used a program to change entire conversations, keeping my tone and style so perfectly that anyone would have believed it was real. She even edited timestamps to align with moments when I had actually texted her about something innocent. It was meticulous, deliberate, pure evil. I realized then that I wasn't fighting a normal person, I was fighting someone who treated deception like an art form. Every day felt heavier. My catering orders dried up. The silence in my home grew unbearable. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at old family photos, wondering when the smiling woman in those pictures became the villain in everyone else's story. Nancy tried to keep me grounded. She'd call every morning, checking in, bringing coffee, reminding me that I wasn't alone. "You're stronger than you think," she said one day, holding my hand. "But you have to keep your head down until the truth comes out." I wanted to believe her. But some nights, when I lay in bed, I wasn't sure I could keep going. The pain of losing your reputation is one thing, but losing your child's trust? That's a different kind of grief. It hollowed me out from the inside. Weeks went by with no word from Jordan. I left voicemails, gentle and brief, hoping he'd hear my heart through the static. But he never called back. Then, one rainy afternoon, my phone rang. I saw his name. I answered quickly. "Jordan?" His voice was quiet but firm. "Mom, I think you need to stay out of our lives for a while. It's what's best." I froze. "What?" "Brielle's been crying every night. You're stressing her out. Please, just give us space." He hung up before I could respond. The silence that followed felt deafening. My world, my family, my name, my dignity had all been dismantled by one woman's lies. And then came the day Jordan finally said the words I never thought I'd hear. "Mom, I think you need to stay out of our lives." Hearing my own son say those words broke something inside me. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to truly feel invisible, to scream the truth into a void and have no one hear you. The sound of his voice saying, "Stay out of our lives," echoed in my head long after the call ended. It didn't matter that I had proof, evidence, or witnesses. None of it mattered because the person I loved most had already made up his mind. For days, I couldn't bring myself to eat or sleep. Every room in my house felt haunted by memories of Jordan. The kitchen where I'd taught him to bake cookies. The hallway where he'd hung his high school diploma. The living room where we'd danced after his engagement party. Everything reminded me of a son I couldn't reach anymore. Nancy came over the next morning and found me sitting at the table, surrounded by printouts of screenshots and messages. "Denise," she said softly, "you can't live like this. You're torturing yourself." "What else can I do?" I asked, my voice cracking. "He won't listen. She's poisoned him against me." Nancy squeezed my hand. "Then we wait. The truth always has a way of surfacing." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But patience is hard when your heart's breaking. I decided to write Jordan a letter. A long, honest letter explaining everything. I poured my heart onto the pages, telling him about the lies, the fake screenshots, the hacker who was helping me, everything. I wrote about the love we shared, the bond we had, and how much I missed him. It took me hours, but when I was done, I felt lighter. I mailed the letter that same afternoon, praying he would read it with an open mind. A week passed with no response. Then 2. Then 3. When I finally called him again, he answered, sounding cold. "Mom, I don't appreciate you sending that letter." Brielle said it made her feel threatened. I was stunned. "Threatened?" "Jordan, I only told you the truth. She said you're obsessed with her, that you're working with some kind of hacker to stalk her online." I froze. My blood went cold. That was private, something only I and Nullcipher knew. How did she find out? "Just stop, Mom, please. You're making this worse." When the line went dead, I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. Brielle had intercepted the letter. She'd twisted even that into something ugly. That night, I sat alone in the dark, feeling completely defeated. For the first time, I began to question if the fight was worth it. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe it was time to give up. But then I opened my laptop and saw a new email from Nullcipher. "Don't lose hope," it read. "The web always leaves traces. She can't hide forever." Attached was another document, evidence of Brielle's manipulations. This time, it was a spreadsheet of all her fake accounts, linked by the same IP address. The hacker explained how she used different usernames to post lies under the guise of concerned friends. I couldn't help but marvel at how thorough Brielle had been. She had an entire system for deception. Dozens of aliases, each with its own voice, backstory, and posting schedule. It was madness. The hacker assured me they were getting close to something bigger. "There's a reason she's so desperate to silence you," the message said. "She's hiding something else." I didn't know what that meant, but it scared me. In the meantime, I tried to keep living, though it barely felt like living at all. I lost several catering clients who said they needed to avoid drama. People who had hugged me for years now crossed the street to avoid me. I started wearing sunglasses and hats when I went out, just to feel anonymous. Nancy was my anchor through it all. Every day, she showed up with food, or tea, or just quiet company. Sometimes we didn't talk. We just sat together in silence. It was the only peace I had left. I began recording every phone call, every conversation I had with Brielle or Jordan just in case. I kept a detailed log of everything that happened. If I couldn't convince the world, at least I'd have the truth documented somewhere. One night, I asked the hacker, "Why are you doing this for me?" Their response was short. "Because I've seen people like her destroy too many lives. She needs to be stopped." That was enough for me. I didn't care who they were or where they came from. All I cared about was the promise of justice. Still, the loneliness ate at me. Every day felt like I was walking through a fog, waiting for something to break. Then, about a month after that phone call with Jordan, I received a final message from Nullcipher. "Be patient. You'll need to be ready." I didn't know what they meant, but their tone was different this time. It wasn't reassurance, it was warning. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was nearing its end. I didn't know it then, but the proof that would save me was already in motion. 3 weeks later, the hacker messaged me with a chilling attachment. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, and staring blankly at the rain sliding down the window when the notification popped up. My heart started to race before I even opened it. Nullcipher's messages had become the only thing that gave me any sense of direction, and this one was labeled, "Final Proof." I clicked. Inside was a single folder titled Brielle, Truth. My hands trembled as I opened it. The folder contained a dozen screenshots, a few PDFs, and several short audio files. The first document was an email thread, Brielle's personal email between her and a man named Patrick L. The subject line read, "Payment due." The emails revealed something I could barely process. Brielle had been blackmailing her former employer. She'd threatened to leak confidential information about financial misconduct unless they paid her in installments. It wasn't just petty manipulation, it was a serious crime. I read each message slowly, my eyes widening as the story unfolded. She'd been extorting this man for nearly 6 months, claiming she had evidence that could ruin the company's reputation. One email from Patrick read, "You've already gotten 2 payments. Leave me alone or I'll call the police." Her response was cold and calculated. "If you do, your investors will know about your little offshore accounts by morning." I sat back in my chair, stunned. This woman who had painted herself as a victim to everyone was a predator. She thrived on control, on fear. And now, thanks to Nullcipher, I had undeniable proof. The hacker sent a short follow-up message. "This is what she's really afraid of. She's kept it buried for years. The payments were traced to a hidden account under her maiden name. She's not just a liar, she's a criminal." Then came the audio files. I hesitated before clicking play, but curiosity won out. The first one was a voice memo, Brielle's voice, unmistakably hers. "I know how to make people believe anything," she said, laughing softly. "All you have to do is play the victim, cry a little, tell them you're broken, and they'll hand you their trust like candy." My stomach turned. I clicked the next file. This one was worse. "Denise is stubborn," Brielle said. "But she'll break. They always do. Once I isolate her from everyone, she won't have the strength to fight back." I paused the recording, my hand over my mouth. I felt a wave of nausea. The woman I'd once called my daughter-in-law had been plotting my destruction with clinical precision. It wasn't about a misunderstanding or family tension, it was about power. I sent a quick reply to Nullcipher. "What do I do with this?" Their answer came swiftly. "Don't confront her yet. Gather yourself. When the time is right, you'll know. She's already spiraling. You just have to let her collapse under her own lies." I didn't know how to let someone like Brielle collapse. I wanted her to face consequences. to see her empire of deceit crumble publicly. But I also wanted to be smart. If I moved too soon, she'd twist it again. Over the next few days, I listened to those recordings over and over. Each time, I found another layer of malice in her voice. It wasn't just manipulation, it was enjoyment. She liked watching people unravel. I printed out the emails and organized them neatly in a folder. My plan wasn't revenge, it was survival. I needed to clear my name, to reclaim my dignity, and to show my son who his wife truly was. Nancy was the first person I showed the files to. She sat in stunned silence, her eyes wide as she listened to Brielle's voice. "Good Lord, Denise," she whispered. "This isn't just lying, this is sociopathy." "I know," I said quietly. "And she's been living under my roof, eating at my table, calling me Mom." Nancy shook her head. "You have to tell Jordan." "I will," I said, my voice trembling. "But not yet. I want to make sure there's no blind way she can deny it." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the years Brielle had stolen from me, the laughter she'd faked, the trust she'd exploited, the son she'd turned against me. But I also thought about the moment that was coming. The moment when all of it would unravel. By the next morning, I had a plan. I was going to invite Jordan and Brielle to dinner. I'd act calm, kind, and loving, like I was ready to reconcile. Then, when the time was right, I'd show them everything. Not in anger, but in truth. Before I closed my laptop that morning, I received one last message from Nullcipher. "She's been deleting things. She suspects someone knows. Be careful. And remember, keep copies somewhere safe." I uploaded everything to an external drive and hid it inside a cookbook on my kitchen shelf. For the first time in months, I felt powerful again. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally had the truth. As I stood by the window watching the sun break through the clouds, I whispered to myself, "It's over, Brielle. It's finally over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't, not yet. There was still one final act left in this twisted play. And I was ready to play my part. I decided it was time for Brielle to face her own truth in front of everyone. If Brielle could play games, so could I, only mine would be backed by truth. I'd spent months living in fear, silenced by her lies, humiliated by the image she'd painted of me. But that was over. This time, I was going to take back control not through revenge, but through exposure. The plan was simple, but every step had to be flawless. I'd invite Jordan and Brielle to dinner, make it look like a peace offering. I'd play the part of the broken, apologetic mother-in-law ready to make amends. And once they were comfortable, once Brielle's guard was down, I'd show her the proof that would dismantle everything she'd built on deceit. Nancy helped me. "Prepare. Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked, watching me carefully as I arranged the dining table. "I have to be," I said, setting out the good china I hadn't used since their wedding anniversary. If I stay silent any longer, she wins. I cooked Brielle's favorite meal, herbed roast chicken with lemon potatoes and green beans. It was strategic. Familiar food brings comfort, lowers suspicion. I wanted her smiling when she walked through that door. When they arrived, Brielle greeted me with her usual saccharine sweetness. "Denise," she said, leaning in for a hug I didn't return, "this is such a surprise." Jordan stood behind her, his expression wary but hopeful. "I'm glad you reached out, Mom. I just thought it was time to put everything behind us," I said softly. "No more tension, no more anger. Just family." We sat down to dinner. I poured the wine and smiled through every bite, pretending not to notice the way Brielle kept glancing at her phone. She was composed, confident, completely unaware that the ground beneath her was about to crumble. I made small talk, asked about Jordan's work, Brielle's baking business, and their plans for the holidays. I even laughed when Brielle told a story about a catering disaster she'd had last month, one that sounded suspiciously similar to an old story of mine. But inside, my mind was counting down. After dessert, I took a deep breath and said, "Before you go, there's something I'd like to clear up, once and for all." Brielle's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Oh?" I stood and walked over to the counter, where my laptop sat open but dark. I just want to put everything on the table. No accusations, just facts. Jordan frowned. Mom, what is this? Proof, I said quietly. I clicked play on the first audio file, Brielle's voice, clear as day, laughing as she said, all you have to do is play the victim, cry a little, and they'll believe anything. The sound filled the room. Jordan's head snapped toward his wife, his brow furrowed in disbelief. Brielle? Her face went pale. That's not me, she stammered. That's fake. I played the next recording. Denise is stubborn, but she'll break. Once I isolate her from everyone, she won't have the strength to fight back. Jordan pushed his chair back, staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. What is this? Fabricated, she said, her voice shaking. She's lying. She probably paid someone to do this. I didn't say a word. I simply opened the next file, emails between Brielle and her ex-employer. Her threats, the blackmail, the money transfers. Jordan's jaw tightened. Tell me this isn't real, he said, his voice trembling. Brielle looked trapped. It's taken out of context, she said quickly. I was just bluffing. You know how people talk when they're angry. Brielle, I said, keeping my tone calm. I didn't make this up. The messages came from your own accounts. You destroyed my name, my business, my friendships, and for what? So people would pity you? She turned on me, her face twisting. You think you're so perfect, Denise. You've always looked down on me. You made me feel small every time I walked into this house. Jordan raised his voice. So you decided to destroy her reputation? To make everyone hate her? Tears filled Brielle's eyes, but this time they didn't look real, they looked practiced. You don't understand. She never liked me. Stop, he said sharply. I've defended you against everyone, even my own mother. Tell me the truth, did you do this? For a moment, silence hung thick in the room. Then Brielle looked down, her voice barely audible. I just wanted people to see what she's really like. She never gave me a chance. I exhaled slowly, the weight of months of torment pressing down on me. You could have asked for love, Brielle. Instead, you demanded power. Jordan stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't believe this. He turned to me, his eyes filled with shame. Mom, I'm so sorry. But I didn't feel relief, not yet. Brielle was still sitting there, her expression shifting from guilt to fury. She glared at me, her voice low and venomous. You think you've won, don't you? I met her gaze. No. I think the truth finally did. Without another word, I unplugged the laptop, closed it, and walked out of the room. My hands were shaking. But for the first time in a long time, it wasn't from fear. It was from release. Behind me, I heard Jordan say, Pack your things, Brielle, we're done. Her voice cracked, pleading. Jordan, please don't do this. But he didn't answer. I stood in the hallway, tears running down my cheeks, not because I wanted revenge, but because justice had finally found its voice. And when Jordan demanded the truth, Brielle's mask finally crumbled. The moment the truth came out, everything changed. For months, I had prayed for that night, for the chance to finally reveal who Brielle really was. But when it happened, when the lies shattered and the mask fell, it wasn't triumph that washed over me. It was grief. Deep, aching grief for everything her deceit had destroyed. The next morning, Jordan showed up at my house alone. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he looked like he hadn't slept. I didn't ask questions. I just opened the door and let him in. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once watched him eat pancakes before school. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, finally, he whispered, You were right about her, Mom. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. I never wanted to be right, I said softly. I just wanted my son back, he nodded slowly. After you left last night, she broke down. She tried to tell me you'd faked everything, but when I showed her the email evidence, she just stopped talking. Then she admitted some of it. Said she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that it got out of control. I poured him a cup of coffee, the only comfort I knew how to give. He stared into it for a long time. She said she loved me, Mom. But how do you love someone and destroy their family? There was no easy answer to that. Love, twisted by insecurity, can become poison, and Brielle's heart had been full of it. Later that day, Jordan went back to their house to pack some of his things. He told me he needed to see for himself what else she might be hiding. When he returned that evening, he looked pale and shaken. She had a burner phone, he said quietly. Dozens of messages to people I've never heard of, men, mostly. Some of them were helping her create fake accounts, posting things about you. She even sent one of them money. I felt sick. Even after all the proof, hearing how elaborate her web of lies was still stunned me. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, he said. I told her to leave. She's staying at a friend's house for now. The following days were a blur. Word spread quickly through town that Brielle and Jordan had separated. People who had once believed her lies started reaching out to me, some to apologize, others out of guilt. But the apologies didn't heal the wound. They didn't erase the humiliation or the nights I'd cried alone. I forwarded all the evidence, the emails, recordings, and documents to Brielle's former employer. I didn't want revenge, but I also couldn't let her hurt anyone else. They replied a few days later, confirming they were turning it over to their legal team. When Brielle found out, she called me. Her voice was frantic, desperate. "Denise, please," she cried. "Don't let them ruin me. You don't understand. If this goes public, I'll lose everything." I stayed silent for a long moment before answering. "You already ruined me, Brielle. And I never lifted a finger to hurt you." She started sobbing. "I just wanted to be enough. Jordan always compared me to you, and I couldn't stand it. You were perfect, and I hung up. There was nothing left to say. Some people can't be reasoned with. They have to face the consequences they create." Days turned into weeks. Jordan filed for divorce quietly, without drama or bitterness. He didn't want revenge either, just distance. He told me he needed time to process everything, and I understood. Healing doesn't come quickly after betrayal. Meanwhile, the hacker Null Cipher sent one final message. "It's done. She can't touch you anymore. The truth is public enough that she won't be believed again." I typed a long reply, thanking them for everything. But when I hit send, the message bounced back. The email address was gone, deleted. Just like that. My mysterious savior vanished from my life as suddenly as they'd appeared. I'll never know who they really were or why they helped me. Maybe they'd gone through something similar. Maybe they were just someone who couldn't stand to see injustice. But whoever they were, they changed everything. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. I could walk into the grocery store without whispers, attend church without stares, and look my neighbors in the eye without shame. Still, even as life began to settle, there was a heaviness I couldn't shake. Because when someone tears apart your name, your relationships, your sense of safety, you never quite go back to who you were before. One evening, Jordan came over to help me fix a cabinet door in the kitchen. We worked quietly side by side, the air filled with unspoken forgiveness. Before he left, he turned to me and said, "I'll never forgive myself for not believing you sooner." I reached out and touched his hand. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. She was good at what she did. Too good." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I just wish I'd seen it." "So do I whispered. "But at least you see it now." That night, I sat on the porch, looking out at the quiet street. For the first time, the silence felt peaceful instead of suffocating. But even in peace, I knew the scars would remain. But what happened next proved that even when you win, the scars of betrayal run deep. The truth was out, but the aftermath wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. When you spend months fighting for justice, you think that once you finally get it, everything will feel light again. You picture people apologizing, your name being cleared, and peace returning like a sunrise after a storm. But the truth is, once the storm passes, you're left standing in the wreckage, trying to rebuild from ruins you didn't create. Brielle's downfall happened faster than anyone expected. Within days of Jordan filing for divorce, the story of her blackmail scheme started circulating through town. I hadn't shared the details with anyone, but apparently, her former employer had. Word spread quickly. Small towns have a way of doing that. People who once called her brave and inspiring online began deleting their comments. Those who had once defended her in neighborhood forums now avoided even saying her name. Her social media accounts disappeared one by one. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all gone. It was like she'd been erased from the digital world she'd used to destroy mine. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel joy watching her crumble. I just felt empty. I'd fought so long to be heard, but victory felt quiet, almost hollow. The damage had already been done. My business, once thriving, was a shell of what it used to be. I'd lost clients, credibility, and months of income. Even though people were now apologizing, the trust was harder to rebuild than I'd imagined. One morning, as I was reorganizing my office, the phone rang. It was Marla, one of the local event planners who'd cut ties with me during the chaos. Her voice was hesitant but sincere. "Denise, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have believed those things. You've always been nothing but kind to me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you, Marla. That means a lot." She paused. "I'd like to start working with you again, if you're open to it." That moment, small as it was, felt like the first step toward normalcy. But not everyone was as gracious. Some people preferred to stay silent rather than admit they'd been wrong. A few still believed Brielle's sob story, insisting she'd been pushed too far. That used to make me furious, but I'd run out of energy for anger. I realized that I couldn't control what people chose to believe. I could only live in truth. As for Jordan, he was a shadow of his former self. He stopped by often, mostly quiet, mostly hurting. The divorce process was grueling, even though Brielle didn't fight it. She just signed the papers, packed what little she had left, and disappeared. The day the divorce was finalized, Jordan came over with takeout. We sat at the same kitchen table where everything had fallen apart months earlier. He looked at me and said, "I feel like I don't know how to start over." "You will," I told him. "You just have to forgive yourself first." He smiled faintly, eyes glassy. "It's easier said than done." "I know," I said softly. "But if I can forgive her, you can forgive yourself." He looked at me, then really looked at me and nodded. That small gesture meant more than words ever could. Around that same time, I received one final message from Nullcipher. It came from a new email address, one that looked even more cryptic than before. The message was short. "Justice served. You can rest now." That was it. No greeting, no signature, no hint of who they were. I hit reply immediately, asking, "Who are you? Why did you help me?" But within seconds, I got an automated response. "This address no longer exists." It felt surreal, like a ghost had slipped back into the shadows after completing their mission. Nancy thought maybe it was someone local, someone who'd seen what Brielle was doing and decided to intervene. But I wasn't so sure. Whoever they were, they knew too much, had access to things no ordinary person could find. I'll never know their true identity, and maybe that's for the best. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. As the weeks passed, the town's gossip turned to new things, new scandals, new distractions. My name stopped being whispered in church hallways. People started treating me like Denise again, not "that woman" Brielle wrote about. I began to take on small catering gigs again. The first was a local baby shower, then a wedding, then a corporate luncheon. Slowly, my calendar began to fill. I didn't realize how much I'd missed the simple joy of cooking for others, of watching people smile and enjoy something I'd made. But even as life settled, I couldn't shake the ache of what I'd lost: trust, innocence, and the version of myself that once believed family could never turn against you. Those things don't grow back easily. Sometimes at night, I'd scroll through old photos, ones of Jordan and Brielle smiling together, back when I still thought she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I'd feel a pang of sadness, not for her, but for the woman I used to be. The woman who saw the world in black and white, not realizing how many shades of manipulation existed in between. Still, I knew I'd survived something many people don't. I'd been destroyed publicly, humiliated, gaslighted, and yet, I was still standing. Maybe that was victory enough. A few months later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. It had no return address. Inside was an Small piece of paper with one line typed neatly in the center. The truth always wins, even if it takes time. No signature. No clue who sent it. But I didn't need one. I tucked it inside my journal, next to the printed screenshots I'd kept all those months. I wasn't keeping them out of anger anymore, I was keeping them as a reminder. A reminder that no matter how loud lies can be, truth has a way of whispering its way back into the light. And just when I thought the story was over, fate sent me one final twist. Months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox from Brielle. It was a cold Tuesday morning in February, and I almost didn't notice the plain white envelope among the bills and grocery flyers. There was no return address, but the handwriting on the front stopped me. I recognized it instantly. The elegant, looping cursive that once addressed my birthday cards now stared back at me like a ghost. My hands trembled as I opened it. I wasn't sure what to expect: anger, excuses, more manipulation, but as I unfolded the letter, the tone was different from anything I'd ever heard from her before. "Dear Denise," it began. "I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't even know if I deserve your time. But I need to say this." She went on to admit everything. The lies, the fake messages, the posts, even the blackmail. "I don't know why I did it," she wrote. "Maybe I do. I was jealous. I was angry that you had everything I wanted: a good reputation, respect, love, a family that actually looked up to you. I wanted to be that woman. And when I couldn't be her, I decided to destroy her instead." I had to stop reading for a moment. My chest felt heavy. Seeing her cruelty written in her own words made it more real, somehow more final. She confessed that she'd started therapy after the divorce. Her counselor had told her to write letters to the people she'd hurt, even if they never responded. She said she'd spent months reflecting on how her insecurity had turned into obsession. "I told myself that if I could make you look small, I'd finally feel big," she wrote. "But all I did was ruin myself. I lost Jordan, my career, and my dignity. And worst of all, I hurt the one person who showed me kindness when no one else did." By the time I reached the last paragraph, my tears were already falling. "You were never my enemy, Denise," she wrote. "You were my mirror, the version of me I could have been if I'd chosen grace instead of bitterness. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly." The letter ended there, with no address, no plea for contact. Just silence. I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the pages. My emotions were a storm: anger, sadness, pity, confusion. Part of me wanted to tear the letter up, to reject the apology after everything she'd done. But another part of me, some softer, older part, felt something closer to relief. I folded the letter carefully and set it beside my cup of tea. For the first time, I realized that what I wanted most wasn't revenge or vindication, it was closure. And maybe, in her own broken way, Brielle had just given me that. When Jordan stopped by that evening, I showed him the letter. He read it quietly, his brow furrowed, his eyes flicking over every line. When he finished, he let out a long breath and said, "I hope she really means it." "She says she's in therapy," I replied softly. He nodded. "That's good. I don't hate her anymore, Mom. I just don't want her in my life." I smiled faintly. "That's enough." We sat together for a while. The silence between us no longer painful but peaceful. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about her at all, it was about me. About letting go of the bitterness that had been eating away at my spirit. That night, after Jordan left, I read the letter one more time. I could almost hear Brielle's voice as I read. It, not the sweet, performative tone she used in public, but something softer, almost human. For the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a broken woman who'd lost herself to envy and fear. I didn't write her back. Some things are better left unspoken. But I folded the letter neatly, placed it in my journal next to the message from Nullcipher, and closed the cover with a quiet sense of finality. The next morning, I went through my computer and deleted every file, every screenshot, every photo related to Brielle. It took hours, but I did it deliberately, one folder at a time. When I emptied the trash bin, I felt like I was breathing clean air for the first time in years. Then I went to my bookshelf and pulled out the old cookbook where I'd hidden the backup drive. I held it in my hands for a moment, then carried it to the backyard and dropped it into the trash can. Nancy came by later that day and found me sitting on the porch, sipping tea. "You look lighter," she said. "I think I finally am," I told her. She wrote to me. Nancy raised her eyebrows. "And? I'm not angry anymore," I said simply. "I think she's finally facing her truth, and that's enough." Nancy smiled gently. "You're a better woman than most, Denise. Maybe. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight of someone else's sins." That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No nightmares, no anxiety, no fear of what the next day might bring. Just peace. But I knew one thing for certain: I'd never be the same woman again. The storm had passed, but the cleanup was mine to face. Once Brielle's shadow finally faded from my life, I had to confront what was left behind. My reputation was scarred, my confidence shaken, and my trust in people, especially family, nearly gone. But as I woke up each morning to the quiet hum of my house, I reminded myself that survival wasn't the end of the story. Healing was. It started small. I began attending Sunday service again. The first time I walked into church, I could feel dozens of eyes on me. For a brief moment, I almost turned back. But then Pastor Jim smiled and said, "Good to see you again, Denise." That simple greeting, so ordinary, so sincere, felt like a bridge back to my old life. People who had once whispered about me began approaching me after service, some to apologize, others just to talk. I accepted their kindness, but I didn't need their apologies anymore. The anger had drained out of me. All I wanted was peace. Nancy, loyal as ever, stayed by my side. We started having weekly lunches again, just like we used to before everything fell apart. We'd sit at our favorite diner, splitting a slice of lemon pie, talking about everything except Brielle. It felt good to laugh again without bitterness hiding behind it. My catering business took time to rebuild, but slowly, the orders came back. The first big job I landed was a wedding for a couple who'd known me for years. When they called to ask if I was available, I nearly cried. "Of course," I said, my voice trembling. "Thank you for trusting me." On the day of the wedding, as I arranged platters and watched guests enjoying my food, a wave of warmth filled me. I realized how much I'd missed this, the simple joy of creating something that brought people together. Jordan came to help that day. He carried trays, set tables, and even joked with the staff. Watching him smile again, seeing his laughter return, healed something inside me I hadn't realized was still broken. He was healing too. The divorce had left scars, but he was learning to live again. He'd moved into a small apartment across town, started volunteering at a local shelter, and spent more time with me than he had in years. Our relationship wasn't just repaired, it was renewed, stronger and more honest than before. One evening, while we were cooking dinner together, he said, "You know, Mom, I used to think love meant defending someone no matter what. Now I realize love means holding people accountable too." I smiled. "That's a lesson most people take a lifetime to learn." Outside of my personal life, something unexpected began to take shape. I started getting messages from women who'd heard parts of my story through whispers in the community. Some of them were going through similar situations, being slandered online, manipulated by family members, or fighting to prove their innocence. They asked how I'd survived it. I began replying to them one by one, offering advice, comfort, or just a listening ear. Eventually, at Nancy's encouragement, I decided to start a small blog. I called it The Quiet Truth. It wasn't fancy, just a simple space where I shared my story and what I'd learned about standing tall when the world tries to tear you down. The first post was titled, "When They Lie About You, Let Time Be Your Voice." To my surprise, it gained traction quickly. Messages poured in from strangers thanking me for putting their pain into words. Some said they'd been too afraid to speak up about their own experiences until they read my story. For the first time, my suffering felt like it had purpose. If my nightmare could help someone else find their way out of theirs, then maybe all of it hadn't been for nothing. Every now and then, I'd think about Nullcipher, the mysterious hacker who'd turned the tide. I never found out who they were. Part of me still wonders. Maybe it was someone who'd gone through something similar, or maybe it was just a stranger who saw injustice and decided to act. Whoever they were, I often whispered a silent thank you into the quiet of my home, hoping somehow it would reach them. One evening, as I was writing a new blog entry, I received a new comment from an anonymous user. It said, "Some truths are hard to hear, but you spoke yours beautifully. Keep going." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart pounding. The username was just a string of letters and numbers, nothing identifiable. But I couldn't help but wonder if it was them. Whether it was or not didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd found strength in my voice again. I wasn't the broken woman hiding behind her curtains anymore. I was rebuilding, piece by piece, from the inside out. Life became gentle again. I spent my mornings gardening, my afternoons cooking, and my evenings writing. The nightmares stopped. The bitterness faded. In its place grew something softer, wisdom perhaps. Or simply the quiet resilience that comes from surviving the worst and still choosing kindness. Jordan still came over every Sunday for dinner. Sometimes we'd talk about old memories, sometimes about his plans for the future. He'd started dating again slowly, cautiously, and I could see he was happier. I told him not to rush anything, and he laughed, saying, "Don't worry, Mom. I learned my lesson about masks." I smiled, proud and grateful all at once. That night, after he left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The air was cool. The sky painted in fading gold. My phone buzzed once, an email notification. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, "You were stronger than you knew." There was no message inside. Just those words. A tear slipped down my cheek, but this time, it wasn't from sadness, it was from gratitude. And then, one final message appeared from an anonymous email that said, "You were stronger than you knew." I never wanted revenge. I just wanted the truth. Looking back now, I realized that what I went through wasn't just about betrayal or lies. It was about rediscovering who I was when everything I valued was stripped away. People think strength looks like anger, like fighting back with equal force. But real strength is quieter. It's surviving when the world thinks you're guilty. It's standing in the ruins and deciding to rebuild anyway. When I tell my story now, I start at the beginning but not with Brielle. I start with me. Because before her lies, before the humiliation, before the hacker and the chaos, I was a woman who believed the world was fair. I was naive. I thought being good was enough to protect you. But life doesn't work like that. People can twist kindness into weakness and truth into rumor. The difference is whether you let it break you or build you. It took losing almost everything to understand that my value was never dependent on what others said about me. Reputation can be taken. Dignity can't unless you give it away. After the storm passed, I began to live differently. Simpler. More deliberately. I spent mornings walking around my neighborhood again, greeting people who once avoided me. Some smiled, some couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't mind either way. I'd already forgiven them. One morning, I stopped at the local cafe for coffee, something I hadn't done since before it all began. The barista, one of the women who'd unfriended me online during the ordeal, hesitated before saying, "Denise, I just wanted you to know we were wrong." I smiled gently. "You were scared. People believe what's easiest to believe." She looked down. "Still doesn't make it right." "No," I said. "But it's human." I realized I didn't want to live the rest of my life angry at the world for failing me. I wanted to live grateful for the fact that I'd survived it. As time passed, my blog, The Quiet Truth, continued to grow. I received emails from all over the country, from women, men, even teenagers, each sharing their own stories of being lied about, manipulated, or publicly shamed. Some of them were still in the middle of their pain, others were healing like I was. They all said the same thing. They felt seen. That was when I knew what my new purpose was. I wasn't meant to just survive my story, I was meant to use it. I started giving small talks at local community centers about digital abuse, slander, and emotional manipulation. The first time I spoke in front of a crowd, my voice shook. But when I saw people nodding, some even wiping away tears, I realized that my pain had become someone else's lifeline. After that, I partnered with a small nonprofit that helped victims of online harassment. I began volunteering once a week, helping people document evidence and understand their rights. Each time I saw someone walk into that room, frightened and broken, I remembered myself sitting in front of my computer, watching my reputation crumble in real time. I always told them the same thing. The truth takes time, but it always comes. Jordan was proud of me. He started visiting my talks, sitting in the back quietly, smiling every time I caught his eye. He'd moved on with his life, found a new job, bought a small house, and was seeing someone new. The woman, Claire, was gentle, soft-spoken, and patient. The first time he introduced us, I saw the ease in his eyes that had been missing for so long. "She's nothing like Brielle," he said later with a small laugh. "I can see that," I replied. "She seems kind." "She is," he said. "And I owe it to you, Mom. You taught me what real strength looks like. That meant more to me than any apology, any justice." Hearing my son say that after everything we'd endured was the true victory. As for Brielle, I never heard from her again after that letter. The last I knew, she'd moved out of state and was still in therapy. Sometimes, I catch myself wondering if she ever found peace, if she ever truly changed. I don't hate her anymore. I think some people get lost in their own pain and lash out because they don't know another way to be seen. That doesn't excuse what she did, but understanding it frees me from carrying it. Sometimes at night, I still think about Nullcipher, the invisible guardian who stepped in, when no one else did. Maybe they were just a random hacker with a conscience, or maybe something more. I'll never know. But every time I open my email and see a new message from someone thanking me for helping them through my story, I think of that anonymous message that once saved me. I've kept two things from that time: Brielle's apology letter and the slip of paper that came in the mail months later. The one that said, "The truth always wins, even if it takes time." I keep them in a small box in my desk drawer, not as reminders of pain, but as symbols of resilience. I used to think my life ended when Brielle's lies began. Now I know it started again because of them. My catering business is thriving once more. My friendships are stronger. My heart is lighter. The whispers have stopped, replaced by quiet admiration from people who once doubted me. But I don't need their validation anymore. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's the most powerful response there is. Because truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs time to be heard. So now, when I tell my story, I end it the same way every time. I look into the camera, or into the eyes of whoever's listening, and I say, "Don't let their lies define you. Let your truth do that instead." Then I smile, because I know I've lived that truth. Because in the end, truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs time to be heard.